Welcome to Avoice, a voice for creators. I'm your host, Daniel Norton. I want to take a moment to thank all the people who have emailed me or sent me private messages or called into the show. Your voice is a big part of this show, and I hope you guys continue to call in. It really is inspiring to me to hear everybody's thoughts and also people's reviews and ratings. Podcasts live and die on these things, so I'd love to ask everybody who's enjoying the show to go on your network that you get your podcast from and rate the show. And if you can, leave a review. And with that, I'd like to actually read a review. So Ed, he sent this review on Tuesday. 5 stars. Thanks, Ed. Okay, here we go. There are so many gear-focused photography podcasts out there. Daniel's is a refreshing change of pace, and thinking deliberately about the why side of photography can make us better at the how too. Do yourself a favor and check it out. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. That really is my goal here. I've said this before. There's a lot of great content out there on the how, even content from me. But the why seems to be less and less. So I'm glad that people are embracing this and calling in and talking about that. And speaking of that, this episode I'm going to talk a little bit about my trip to WPPI, which is a photography conference here in the U.S. It was out in Las Vegas. Don't worry, I didn't lose too much money. But I'm going to talk a little bit about why interacting with other creatives can be very empowering and why it's worthwhile for us to do it, not just for ourselves, but also to help other people. You know, just that back and forth can really be empowering. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the main segment. Then we'll listen to some messages that people have written in, and we'll talk a little bit about how you guys can get your voice on the show. So without further ado, let's talk. Today, I want to talk a little bit about something I'm going to call collective energy. I just came back from teaching at the WPPI convention out in Las Vegas. We did a photo walk. Thanks, anybody listening to this that was in that class. It was super fun. And it was great. You know, the last couple of years, it's been tricky, let's say, to be able to interact with people in the way that we're starting to be able to now. And, you know, there's been ups and downs, obviously. If I roll back like 3-4 years, I was doing live presentations in the Adorama event space almost weekly, and having a crowd of people there, the energy that they bring, the questions they bring, the fact that you're not just staring out at a camera is really different than what we get now. You know, I still do live presentations for Adorama a couple times a month, and we stream them. And it's great. I mean, there's obviously advantages, right? I can reach a lot more people when we're streaming. I can reach to people that are in other countries and they can watch it later in other time zones. They don't have to be there. And this is a great resource, obviously. And I will continue to do that. And, you know, if people are listening to this and don't watch those, then I'll throw a link in the description here. What I'm talking about here, though, is the idea of being with creatives one-on-one. And we'll get into the digital aspects of it a little bit as well, because I think that that's important and has really changed a lot. But I just want to talk about the idea of being with other people. You know, I share my studio with several different photographers. We're not always there at the same time. We have a calendar, basically, and we come in when we're going to use it, when we're not going to use it, so it's not just sitting empty. And it's, you know, we have our own things going on. But every once in a while, we interact or cross. I mean, I cross a lot with Seth because he's, you know, my friend and we hang out. But you know, even the other photographers are in the studio, and we'll hang out and talk 10, 15 minutes. And when that happens, you end up kind of absorbing and also giving out energy to your fellow creative. You know, maybe they had seen something you did and they ask you about it, or maybe you're just talking about how business is, or maybe you're just talking about something that you just did that was really fun, just something that is part of the process of being a creator, because there's so much more than just pressing the button, right? There's all the interaction we have with people, there's the locations we go to, the various equipment that we might use or not use, you know, and all these different things. And having those kind of conversations can really like refuel you. And I feel like I didn't remember or realize that until I went to WPPI. And, you know, I flew out there and, you know, I was like, okay, great, this is going to be fun. We're going to do a photo walk. And I went there, you know, ready to kind of teach and all fired up. And man, the conversations were just great. Just interacting with people during the photo walk in the class, obviously, but then also before and after. You know, when I first arrived the day before the photo walk on Sunday, I was going to check out the area. I scope out the area, of course, because I've done this long enough to know you should scope out your area. And, you know, I met people as I was walking. They were like, hey, Daniel. And we started having conversations. Some of them I had met before. Some of them I knew pretty well. We'd met many times before. Some just recognized me from videos or had seen me in other places and came up and wanted to talk. And this is so great. It's such a great thing to be able to communicate with people on all different levels in all different places. Some people are just starting in their career. Some people have been shooting way longer than me. Some people are very specialized in certain aspects that's cool to hear them talk about it. Some people are growing. I met one young lady who, I asked her, I said, funny enough, because I just put out the podcast about specializing. I said, what are you focusing on? And she just started and she said, I'm kind of dabbling a bit and trying different things to see where I'm really going to focus on, which is, something I talked about last week. And that's great, and we talked a little bit and she said, she came to a conference like this so she could meet a variety of different types of photographers to kind of get their stories, their backgrounds, to interact with them and ask kind of, more specific questions. And also just to see different things. Maybe you've never done a certain kind of photography and now you walk into a seminar and you see that, wow, this is something that I might be interested in. Or maybe you have been doing something and you go and you meet people and you start talking, you see they're doing something slightly different or that can motivate you to do things a little bit different that could help grow your business, of course, but also just help you grow as a creative, right? We meet people and we start talking about things. I met Sandra again. I see her every time at WPPI, and she's a specialist in shooting film. I'll put a link to her in the show notes. And we were talking a little bit about film and like how we would actually, because we shoot film, I shoot a bit of film, meaning analog for people who don't read that, and how do we do that when we're teaching, right? How do we talk about shooting this? Because it's something we love, right? We love creating using the analog medium. It has a certain tactile feel to it. There's something special about being photographed by an analog camera where you can't see it right away. I don't like to use the term that people often use, which is you don't know what you're going to get, because if you've been doing this long enough, you know what you're going to get, but you don't see the exact image. And that is a really interesting feeling for the subject and also for the photographer when you've been doing both things, since I shoot a lot of digital as well. And we were talking about how I had done this years back. Back when we first started doing these presentations for Adorama, we streamed them, but then we would immediately take them down. They wanted them to feel fresh and make people want to watch them live. Change that. That was many years ago. We've changed that and they stay alive now, which I think is probably a better idea. But one of the things that I did, which I don't think is up there anymore because we used to take them down, is we created effectively a dark room there in a live space, and basically in the front of a retail store by using Duotine. And we created a little dark room there. And I did a whole seminar on shooting paper negatives. Because I just thought it would be really interesting to show the process of shooting something that's tactile and that people can engage with and have it be done there live. And we had this little dark room and we had a little camera in there, one of the early Sonys, I think it was an A7, they're really good in low light. We put one of those little red lamps in there and we set up and it was fantastic. We started off, of course, I taught, so this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And then people came up and they posed for the various, the pictures. And then some of them were able to, I let them use the 4x5 camera and they shot the pictures. And just everybody gathered around trying this new technique that they might never use again. But it's just really interesting, right? Really interesting to get the passion of somebody who's very much into something that is different than you. Or people that are into things that are the same as you, of course. But I find people that do things slightly different, even if it's something I'm interested in, right? We all specialize, right? I shoot a certain way most of the time. 75 to 80% of the time, I'm using more or less the same equipment. I have a lot of different gear that sits around not getting used until I need it. But, most of the time I'm doing the same thing, right? I have a certain way that I shoot, certain style I like to work with, certain lenses, certain cameras, certain lighting. But I have other things and I like to play with other things. And sometimes meeting people who do things in a different way than you, or that, somebody could be like, oh, I saw that one video where you used blah, blah light. And, I got one and I've been using it for this and that. And then I think, wow, you know what? I haven't used that thing in a long time. I'm going to go back and actually work with it. Or people might talk about how they present things. This is how I'm doing my presentations. This is how I'm using my portfolio now. How do we interact with the potential people that are going to see our art? How do we interact over social media? And these are all things that when we discuss with other creatives, we can get little tidbits. And I just want to be clear, I'm not talking about necessarily taking a class. This could be as simple as a small town that you might live in. I live in a small town, possibly having like a photo club, with people of all different levels that come together and just talk about photography. And this isn't just true for photography. Obviously, that's what I'm talking about. But for other things too. My mother took up painting after she retired and, took classes, and she interacted with people, and she would come back, energized. She'd come back, oh, it was a great class. We saw this and I learned this thing and I got this new idea and now I'm going to paint these things. And I thought it was really awesome. I love the idea of that. And, when I was a photo assistant, when I first started, I would go on photo shoots, obviously, right? Helping photographers. And it was just wonderful to be on those shoots with those photographers, to pick up little tidbits. It wasn't like they were per se going, this is how you do this, Daniel, but just being there and watching them and engaging with them was just really powerful. And, when I first was learning photography, obviously, I went to school, but, you'd have books. There was Dean Collins. Let me know, call in if anybody had those early Dean Collins VHFs tapes. Dean Collins, thank you. Dean passed away many years ago, but what a great photo teacher on VHS, probably one of the first, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe people know more and they can call in. He was a photographer, commercial photographer, and he would make these VHS tapes that you'd have to buy, of course, in the back of photo magazines, and they would be about different subjects. And it was great, and I learned from that. And I'm assuming he probably did workshops and stuff too. I'd never thought to go to any kind of convention or workshop when I was younger, until I was already working. And then at that point, it was a different part of my life. But I never thought to go to something like a WPPI when I was first starting, right? And I kind of wish I had. The conventions I went to were the ones where you could buy gear cheap. Maybe I was too gear focused early on, right? But anyways, there was books, there was those kind of things. You didn't have what you have now. We have all this digital stuff now. This is fantastic, right? For instance, this show, right? You can call into this show and I will respond to you. And not only that, it's not just, oh, well, Daniel got to respond to me. It's everybody else listening is going to hear what you have to say, which is really great. They're probably picking up little tidbits. We got some great calls already. And I think anybody listening to those call-ins has probably picked up something, I'm sure. Make sure you guys call in if you have something to say, because really, even if you think it's something very minor, another person might hear that and pick up or kind of feel, like that. Hey, I'm like that too. And I think that's really great. And, what I really want to create here is this conversation, this virtual conversation. So, of course, we have the technology of things like live streams now. I've been talking a lot about speaking in person and the energy of that. But the live streams and also things like this podcast that you can call in and interact with can have a similar effect. Right? If you are somewhere where you necessarily can't go to a conference, or the conferences don't happen that often, you can tune in, right, to my YouTube channel. Just follow me on social media. I'm always talking about when I go live. And you can interact with me that way, right, if you want a more technical base. I'm not the only photographer that does that, obviously. And if you want to talk more philosophically, here we are, right? I want to hear what you have to say. Because even though this podcast is a whole lot of me talking, what I really want is it to be a conversation. So I'm going to put at the end of the show, as always, the ways that you can call in and kind of join the conversation. But they're in the show notes as well. So if you're driving or whatever and you can't note it down, you can just follow the links there. But effectively, I'm looking for people to call in every week. I really want to get this vibe going, this conversation, because it not only energizes me, I think it hopefully will energize you guys to hear not just me talking, but all the other people around the world that are listening to this podcast and thinking, hey, I have something to say about that subject as well, and sharing it here, because that is what we want here. We want a conversation. I don't want to just talk at you. I want this conversation to grow, because I feed off of it. Maybe it's a little bit selfish, maybe for lack of a better word, right? I think that a lot of times when people watch YouTube videos or they go to a presentation or they're thinking, oh, wow, I'm getting so much from this because the speaker is really putting it out there. But we're getting it from you as well. The crowd, the people asking questions, the expressions on your face when you get it, right? That's fantastic. Or just typing in the chat, hey, awesome, I got that, I understand. Or, when people respond to my posts on social media with images that they've made using a technique or talking about a subject that I've talked about. This is very, very empowering for me. And I think that's true for most people that create like this. If you are listening to this podcast and you have a YouTube channel or Instagram or any kind of, I'm sure you have something, social media, and that you put things out there, not everybody, I suppose, but let me know how you think about it. Like, do you get energized by people responding? Do you try to make it a point to respond to people that you enjoy so that they know you're out there, right? It's one thing for us to look and say, oh, hey, 500 people have listened to this. But it's another thing to get a call from people that says, hey, I really enjoyed this. Or you look at a YouTube video and it's 1,000 views, but you get 20 comments underneath. That's actually, to me anyways, almost more rewarding, because the view is one thing. It's like, okay, they're getting something from it, but the comment is, I got something from it, and it was enough to motivate me to write a comment or to call in or to thumbs up something, right? All these things help give feedback to the creators, and we strive for that, not because our ego boost or whatever. I mean, maybe it's that a little bit, but I want to know that you're getting something from it. And I've been talking a lot about photography, but this is true of a lot of things. I'm a gamer. I'll confess, I'm Daniel and I'm a gamer. And when I go to gaming conventions, it is just amazing to interact with other people that run games like I do, or that play games, or that have seen, because I have a YouTube channel for that too, have seen the videos that I've done. It's really powerful in all parts of my life, really. I like to interact with people. I go to concerts, right? So I can interact with other fans of that musician. I go to conventions because I'm interested in a certain thing, like New York Comic Con, or I'm going to GaryCon in March to run some games. All these things are ways that we can interact with each other, because ultimately, as artists, even though when we're creating, and I've talked about this before, we can focus down and be within ourselves, it is the things around us that generally make us want to create. Hopefully positive things around us, but sometimes negative, right? Sometimes creativity comes from the negative. Sometimes because something bad has happened in our lives or is happening, we will create from that. You see that a lot. I see that a lot anyways with music, where songs are written because of some kind of thing that happened. I was in Las Vegas, as I mentioned, and I was in a taxi, and there was a radio playing. Radios play very much anymore. But the song "Ohio" from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young came on, and of course, if anybody knows the background of that song, it was written about a terrible, tragic thing, and it was definitely a political song. And I think that's just powerful, to be able to be moved by something bad as well as being moved by something fantastic, because that's it, right? We are humans. We have emotions. There's many things that will cause us to create art. We are using the art as a way to cope with things on some level, and also as a way to express things, and as a way to hopefully help people, but also to help ourselves, right? Ultimately, as artists, we are putting it out there because we need to release it, right? There's something inside that needs to come out, and that could come out through photography, that could come out through music, that could come out through all kinds of things, improv theater, stand-up comics, all these types of things where people are producing something that's coming from inside, hoping that other people will connect to it on some level. That's really what it's all about to me. That's what being a creator is about. But, let me know. Like, I know I've had a few photographers call in, but is there anybody listening to this that wants to call in that is not necessarily a photographer, but does something else that is where this is applicable? Maybe you go to gaming conventions. Maybe you are a musician. Maybe you go to concerts. Tell me how your interaction with other people that kind of share the same artistic loves as you has helped you or does help you. So what I'm really saying here is that we, as people, can collect energy from others and give energy to others and create a community around the creation and consumption of various types of creative media, art, if you want to use that word. And this can be a powerful thing. It is for me. I'm sure it is for other people who I've talked to in person about, and I would love to know how it is for you. So, like I said before, go ahead and call in. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll talk to you soon. So last week's episode about specializing versus generalizing, there was a bit of conversation over on Facebook and Twitter, and it seemed like some people kind of took the area. They said, no, I've been generalizing my whole life, and that worked for me. Other people said specializing works. And that just goes to show you, right? Everybody's business model is a little bit different. And I do think people didn't really get into details, but I do think that generally speaking, if you are able to make it as a generalist, you're probably in more of what I'm going to call a smaller market. Because again, I still stand by my points that people see specialists as kind of better at the specific thing they're looking for. And most people looking for things are looking for that. If it's a smaller market, then it's kind of just like, oh, you're the photographer, you do it all, right? But if you are in a larger market where there's lots and lots of competition, they want to really see you stand out. I still stick by that. I mean, let me know. You can still call in if you disagree. And of course, like I say, there's definitely people that are generalists that do really, really well. Some really pretty famous ones. But I think generally speaking, specialists are going to have a better chance in the bigger market. On that note, I did get a pretty nice long email here from Luis that I want to read. So the stuff that people write on social, I don't want to read it on here because I wasn't given permission. So if you did write something on social in the future, or you send me a private message and you want me to read it, just make sure you let me know that that's the case. This specifically I'm going to read. So again, this is from Luis. Hello, Daniel. I'm Luis Miguel from Venezuela, living in Chile. Yes, well, when I started with photography, I tried different photography styles: food photography, portraits, landscape, products, etc. Having gone through different styles, I discovered that I'm passionate about portraits. And shortly after that, I found your YouTube channel and started watching your videos on Adorama, which taught me a lot, and I thank you. You're welcome. As for supply and demand in the market, you see, I think here in Latin America, the mentality doesn't help that much, okay? Being versatile may help you get more clients, while being specialized reduces potential clients. This is obvious. I know. But what I'm trying to say is that Latinos associate specialization with high costs and prefer to save some money. They must be like my Irish grandmother. The problem with me is that I'm very stubborn, and what I want to do is portraits. So that is where I'm putting all my effort, because I know that eventually I'll make a living from it. Thank you for starting this project where you share your thoughts, which I find extremely interesting. Thank you. And give us space to communicate. You can read this email on your podcast. Big hug. See ya. Well, thanks, Luis. This is really interesting, and I've been there. You know, I think that when you are deciding that you want to specialize, it's easy to feel nervous, because when you're a freelancer, you know, the work comes less often, and tying this into the whole specialized sounds more expensive kind of vibe. Yeah, you know, you can generally charge more as a specialist. So it might be that, again, whenever I do these things, I talk about money, I just use random numbers, so don't take this as what people really make. But let's say that you can get $10 for every photo shoot. That's just anything going out there. You just said $10, I'll shoot anything. And you get lots of work, and you're working every day shooting these $10 photo shoots. And at the end of the month, you're like, yay, I worked every day. But if you specialize, you might only work once every 6 weeks, but you might get $100 for that photo shoot. And I'll tell you, the 5.5 weeks building up to that day are terrifying. You know, it's very, very difficult to feel confident when nothing seems to be coming in. But if you can make it work, it's very effective. One place I've seen this a lot is in, let's say, wedding photography. And I know that this isn't specialization per se, but it's the cost thing. I've seen wedding photographers that shoot weddings every weekend and, you know, make a living, but they're not doing super well. Then I see wedding photographers shooting 10 weddings a year that make double what those other people make. And yeah, it's scary to be that expensive person, really. I mean, they probably are all, are really good and I make lots of money. But the reality is deep down they're thinking, yeah, I need to shoot these 10 weddings a year. And when I'm going through the year and I've only got 3 booked at the beginning of the year, I'm nervous, because if I don't book 10, I'm in trouble. Should I try to lower my price to get more? And you have these thoughts. But the reality is that if you are good and you are specialized, you can, you know, and the market can support it, you can do it. It just takes the focus in a way to do it. And you can offer specials, and you can go outside your specialty to do some other work. It doesn't mean you can't do that. Like I will say that, again, I was a fashion photographer for most of my career. I'm a portrait photographer now. If somebody approaches me and says, hey, can you shoot this product? I'm not going to say no if I have the time, if I'm qualified to do it. But I don't put that on my website. I don't put that in my portfolio. I don't list myself as that. But it happens. The handful of weddings that I've shot have been when people have contacted me and said, I want a different look. I want a fashion photographer to shoot my wedding. Okay. I had a really good fashion client I got for a long time that started out as a product job, because they had been shooting they were bridal headpieces, like veils and stuff. They had been shooting them on models, and they weren't satisfied with the way they looked. So they thought, you know, again, oh, well, it's because we need to do product photography, because on the model you can't get the good detail. The reality was they just didn't have a photographer that, and not throwing shade at the photographers, yes, I am a little bit, they just had a photographer that couldn't do it right. So what happened was, I said, okay, sure. You know, they explained the whole thing to me. I said, I'll shoot that like that, but let me shoot at the end. If we get everything done, let me take some time and just shoot a few on a model, just as a test. No extra charge for that, just only the film because we're shooting film at the time. And if you're happy with it, then maybe next time we'll shoot on a model. And they said, oh, sure, whatever. It doesn't cost us anything. And yeah, that was a cover of the catalog, right? Because it was shot on a model, which is much more generally attractive to the customer than the product stuff. And the next time we shot, they let me shoot about a third of it on models because they were, they still were unsure. And then the next time half. And then by the end, we shot almost everything on model. It just took time for me to convince them that that's what we do. So I went outside my area, but then I brought them into the thing that I specialize in because I specialize in shooting fashion on figure. And I know how to make it work where you can see the detail. Whoever was doing the catalog before didn't have the skill set to do it, and maybe they were specialists too. Maybe they were just starting. Maybe they, whatever reason, they didn't do a good job. Again, I'm not going to call, this was many years ago. So I don't even know if the photographers are around anymore. But my point being is that you can specialize and you can put yourself out there as, hey, I am Luis Miguel. I am a portrait photographer. But if somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you shoot this e-commerce stuff for me this weekend? And you've got the time and the ability, yeah, do it. Do it if you need to make the cash, if you're doing this as your living. People have a little more flexibility when they're doing it as a side project and they're building up, like especially if you do, kind of weekend photography, like wedding photography or some kind of portrait photography where you can kind of still work a regular job. What I'm saying is you should present yourself as a specialist, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily don't do any other work. Maybe if that wasn't clear, the last thing, this is we'll add that to the circle. Maybe that changes some of the people who say they've been generalists their whole life. Maybe that changes their opinion on what I'm saying. But yeah, I'm not saying never shoot anything else. What I'm saying is when somebody looks at your work, they should see a heavy influence of the main thing that you shoot. I remember when websites were kind of beginning, that's how old I am. Really beginning, people were really starting to do websites. Photographers would be like, wow, instead of just having one portfolio, I can have 17 portfolios. This is personal work. This is product work. This is celebrity work. This is whatever. And like most of the categories, they'd have like 2 pictures in, and then they'd have the rest of their portfolio, which was the main thing they did was the rest of it. And it was like, why do you even have those there? Just keep them in a way that if somebody ever asks you, hey, have you ever shot products? You can just show them. The way that we used to do it was on my side I would have hidden links, just a link that nothing went to. You'd have to know the URL basically. Now you could easily send people DMs. You could do drop boxes. You could do all kinds of things. Things are much easier, PDFs. But anyway, my point being is that you can still do other things, even if you're a specialist. It's just that the specialization should be what people think of when they think of you. So thanks everybody who wrote in. If you guys would like to hear your voice on the air, you can leave a message using the Anchor app or the link that I will have in the description below. So you can actually have your voice. If you don't feel comfortable speaking, you can send me an email to adoramavoice@gmail.com and I will read it for you. I'd definitely love to have your voice on the air. And I guess there's a third way would be if you want your words here and it's a review, go ahead to your favorite podcasting platform. Go ahead and leave me a review there. I will start reading a review a week and I'll talk to you soon.